we are going now to restructure our code. We are going to pass from everything inside the source folder to this kind of a structure. An asset folder with styles inside, components with all the components inside. We will have to keep index.js because Webpack says that the application starts from there and we don't want to modify the Webpack configuration, and a test folder with the test inside. Okay, let's code it. The first thing is to create the folders, assets, and inside styles, and now components. And in the upper folder, tests. And we are going now to move everything. The CSS go to the styles, the index go to the styles, and now the components. The test go to the test folder, board to the component, header to the component. I keep index logo, and the other component is square. The logo, well, we are not going to use it anymore because it was from the default application, so we can delete it. But we have also to remove the reference. If you haven't done so, in the app component, you have to remove the import. What we have to do now is to change or edit the rest of the imports. Why? Because we have moved and restructured things like this one. Now the CSS is not inside the same folder but in the upper folder, so it is like this: assets, styles. Perfect. Header and board doesn't need to be changed because they are in the same folder as they were before. And now in the index.js I have to change also the CSS that is in the same folder in assets, styles, and the app component, that is the one that we render in the first place, is in the components folder. If we save and we go to our application and start it, if everything is working, it will open and it will show the same interface. Perfect. We have here our tic-tac-toe, and now the application can grow in a better way that everything inside the same folder. Perfect. Let's continue. We are going to see now how to introduce the event flow into our application. Remember that in React, data flows down and events flow up. What we have up to now is that app calls header and board and pass as props text and values, and the board renders 9 squares and each square will have a value. What we are going to add here now is to pass also the functions to be called and to call them, and we will see that as events go up. So what about the event flow? What do we have to do? We will have to create this function appClick inside our app component. It will have to change the state to reflect the new situation, what happened in the application. In this case, a square was clicked by the user. Important, we are not going to mutate the state, we are going to clone it and modify the clone, and we will do a set state. And what do we need to change the state? Well, we need the turn, that is also inside the state, and we need to know what square was clicked. And the final photo of our application will be like this. We have the app component that calls the board and passes the values, but also the appClick. And the board will pass that function, that we'll call it board click, to the square. And when something happens, the user clicks on the square will call board click, and the board will call appClick, and appClick will modify the state, and with a set state everything will be re-rendered. Okay, let's code it. We start from our application, the interface, but the events are not working. What we are going to do is to add that here. Well, let's start, as we said, with up click, and we are going to bind, as always, to be able to use this object. We are going to bind it, and we are going to do the same in board click and in square. How? In board click we are going to create a constructor and a board click method, board click dot bind dot this, and board click. I'm creating the structure, and I'm going to copy this structure to a square here. In this case, I'm going to call it square click, and I'm going to put it like there and there. Well, I have the structure now that are a square click method, a board click, and up click. How do I pass this method as a prop to the board so the board is able to call it? Well, it's easy. It's the same as we pass text or values here. We call it up click, and it is equals to the up click. Perfect. Sorry, I have to close the curly braces. Okay. So now board will be able to pass to call it. Well, and the same happens here. I have the square, and I'm going to call it to pass another attribute, another prop, that is board click. This equals dit dot. This is the data flow, because this is data that we are passing to the child component that we are rendering. Perfect. Now we are able to call it. Well, what happens in the square? Well, in the square, what I have to do is when somebody clicks on the button, I'm going to restructure it. When somebody clicks on the button, I am going to call, so I'm going to put an on click. Remember that this has to be camel case, and I'm going to call square click. Okay, so now I have the structure, up, board, and square, and from square I'm going to call this method square click. But what information do I know? Do I need to know in each square? The row and the column that was clicked. Okay, we will call it, we will use an arrow function, square click. When somebody clicks on the button, the user, we will call square click. Perfect. But we need more information, as I said here. We need to know which column and row is here, and this square doesn't know it. There is no that information there. The board is the one that knows the row index and the column index. It will have to pass it to the square. So row index is row index, and column index is the column index. So now, as the board knows, because he is doing a map with the values, he knows the row index and the column index, he passes the information down to the square. Now the square knows the row index and column index. What are the names of these row index and column index? Well, they are props. They are inside props, and the names are the one that we gave them. Row index, this dot props dot column index. Look, they are like here. This dot props dot row index, this dot props dot column index. They are inside props, and they have these names that we gave them inside the board component here. And a square click has received row and column index and calls board click. Where is board click, and why is it available? Again, it is inside the props. Board click with row index and column index. So when somebody clicks on the button, there is an on click that will call a square click with 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 0, the row index and column index, and it will call board click with that information. Board click with that information doesn't do anything, it will call up click. So it receives also row and column index, and it calls up click. That is received, as always, as a prop. This part here is very easy and it doesn't do almost anything. That could have been done here, calling directly this.props.upClick with an arrow function, but for simplicity, although it's a little bit verbose, we have done it here. We call upClick with row and column index, perfect, and in the upClick we receive row and column index, and now we have to do our application logic. We have created the structure. We have passed, as you can see, it to the child, and we receive the call when something happens. What we have to do now is to modify the state. But as I told you, we are not going to mutate it, immutability of the state. So we are going to clone it, that is JSON parse JSON stringify of these state values. There are other ways to clone a JavaScript object, but this is very easy and we are going to use it this way. And now, new values, row index, column index is equals to X or 0 or an O. Depending on what? Depending on the turn. Where is the turn? In the state. We are going to use the ternary operator, and depending on the state, if the state is equal player X, let me add and put it to the left. If the state is equal player X, the movement is X, and if not, is a 0. So now we have new values. What we are going to do is, with these new values, is to set a new state, and after that everything will be re-rendered and the data will flow down. We have, in the new state, we have to set the turn and the new values. The new values, we have already calculated them, new values. And the turn, what is the turn? Well, another ternary operator. Did the state turn? If it is player X, change it to player 0, and if not, if it is player 0, it will be player X. So another ternary operator. Okay, now if we save the 3 components, we have created the structure, and well, something is broken. Set state, look, set a state. We save it, and now everything is working. You see, you can create more functionalities in this tic-tac-toe, but for us it's finished, it's working. Remember that we have modified only the state here, and that we have passed the application click, up click, the function to the child, and at the same time the board will pass this function to the child and row and column index to the square, and the square will call it with the information when something happens, and the data flows down and events flow up. So the application is finished, and thank you very much.